We know that Brian Burns is going to be franchise tagged here in Carolina. The only question is, will it be the exclusive franchise tag or the non-exclusive franchise tag? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays throughout the offseason on the show, I'm answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me. But of course, follow me first on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. In North Carolina, March 11th, next Monday, sports betting is officially here. So please go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and be ready to go. All right. The deadline is here today, Tuesday, March 5th, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Carolina Panthers and the rest of the NFL teams have a decision to make on many players on whether they're going to franchise tag them. And we know here in Carolina, the primary candidate is Brian Burns. All the reports say that he's going to be franchise tagged. We have heard it from Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. We've heard it from Adam Schefter of ESPN. We have heard it from Josina Anderson. We know it's going to happen. The only question that really remains with that, there's three, I guess. Are the Panthers going to extend Brian Burns once they franchise tag him? Are they going to tag, then trade Brian Burns? And then the third one is, what franchise tag are they going to use? Are they going to use the exclusive franchise tag where he cannot negotiate with other teams? Or are they going to use the non-exclusive franchise tag where he can negotiate with other teams? And the Carolina Panthers potentially could get a significant draft haul. So I have to apologize to all of you to start off the show, and I feel like a complete idiot. I really do. All day long, I have been chomping at the bit to come here to set the record straight because I feel bad. I try to be informative. I try to lead you guys down the right path, and I really dropped the ball on this one, so I'm really sorry. The non-exclusive franchise tag, it has been used in the past on a lot of quarterbacks. That is not on a lot of quarterbacks. They're getting another thing wrong. It has been used on the past on quarterbacks. In the past on quarterbacks. I'm sorry. I'm frazzled here. I'm trying to get things right. I'm trying to set the record straight. I'm hurting right now because I feel bad because I really want you to trust me and I don't want to mess these things up moving forward. The non-exclusive franchise tag has been used on quarterbacks about 10 times in NFL history. Because typically, if you have a quarterback, you're not going to allow them to negotiate with another team and potentially leave via trade. Lamar Jackson last year was given the non-exclusive franchise tag, meaning a team could have talked to him, gave him an offer sheet, and if the Ravens had not matched it, he would have left to go to the other team, and the Ravens would have received 2 first-round picks from that team. So it has happened very few times at quarterbacks. But when it comes to every other position, it actually is the most common franchise tag. Now, with that being said, the last player to be placed on the non-exclusive franchise tag and then to sign an offer sheet and then be traded elsewhere was Joey Galloway in 2000. He was playing with the Seahawks. The Cowboys signed him to an offer sheet. He ended up not having it matched by the Seahawks and was traded to Dallas. They got 2 first-round picks, the Seahawks did, and one of those ended up being Sean Alexander. So it worked out for the Seahawks at the end of the day. So it does not happen. It's rare. It's been 24 years since the non-exclusive franchise tag was placed on a player, and then that player signed an offer sheet, didn't have it matched, and then was traded to another team, and their old team received 2 first-round picks. So my bad. Truly, it's my bad. I tried to Google it, figure it out. the first time around was only seeing references to Lamar Jackson because that was a huge news story this time last year. And they mentioned all the quarterbacks. And I just could not find the other players of other positions that had also received the non-exclusive tag. So that is on me. Last year, it was Lamar Jackson. It was Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram, Josh Jacobs, Daron Payne, and Tony Pollard, who all were placed on the non-exclusive franchise tag. So again, that's on me. That's my bad. I feel awful about it. You can go ahead and you can dog cuss me and tell me I'm an idiot because I agree with you. I am a moron. I am an idiot. I got this one wrong. I'm so sorry about all of that. Truly, bottom of my heart, I hate to ever get any of this kind of information wrong to y'all, especially the people that listen on a daily basis. So seriously, so sorry about that. That's my final apology. Now, with all that being said, Joey Galloway, 2000, last time a player was placed on a non-exclusive franchise tag and actually left that team via the offer sheet and then 2 first-round picks going to their old team. 24 years. So with the Carolina Panthers and Brian Burns, the non-exclusive franchise tag is $24 million. The expectation is that he will be franchise tagged. And I would imagine the Panthers will probably place now the non-exclusive franchise tag. Now they actually know what the hell I'm talking about. So that would make sense for them to do that, to allow Brian Burns to negotiate with other teams to figure out what that offer may be. But I'm not quite sure a team actually would be willing to give Burns an offer sheet and risk giving up 2 first-round picks. Now, you're probably saying, okay, Julian, well, the Rams, not too long ago, trade deadline 2022, were giving up 2 first-round picks, and depending on whose report you believe, either a second or a third-round pick to go along with that. That is significant capital. So if the Rams wanted to do that before, why would a team not now do that with the non-exclusive franchise tag? Decent question. With the Rams back then, they still could have utilized the 5th-year option that Brian Burns was already placed on. They had plenty of time to negotiate with him and figure out a long-term deal. Whereas now, a team is giving up their first-round pick in April's draft, next year's draft as well, and they are going to have to probably come to terms with Brian Burns on a long-term deal to get that cap number down from the franchise tag, the non-exclusive tag that he's set to be placed on likely here in Carolina. Things are a little bit more complicated than they were a year and a half ago at the trade deadline. It's not as simple. Now look at the situation going on in Kansas City with L'Jarius Sneed, their star cornerback. It does not look like the Chiefs are going to be able to keep him around. They have already gone out there on Monday afternoon and placed a non-exclusive franchise tag on Sneed. But all the reporting at the Combine and reading Albert Breer on Monday morning is that the Chiefs are not expecting to get 2 first-round picks for L'Jarius Sneed. That would be insane to get 2 first-round picks for a cornerback. Like when it comes to a quarterback, a franchise quarterback like Lamar Jackson, and we had the conversation about this yesterday, if he's not going to get offer sheets and potentially leave, why would that be the case for any other player? And I understand the circumstances last year of Jackson and the owner's unwillingness to give quarterbacks fully guaranteed contract after what happened with the Browns and Deshaun Jackson or Watson. I totally understand. That was a different scenario last year than it would be now with Burns potentially, and certainly what's going on in Kansas City with L'Jarius Sneed. The Chiefs are probably, according to Albert Breer, hoping for like a second-round pick. That's what they're hoping for. They're hoping to get, at the very least, that plus some more picks. Not expecting to get 2 first-round picks. They know teams are smart enough then to give up 2 first-rounders for L'Jarius Sneed. And that's going to be the same case with Brian Burns. And a lot of players like last year, Daron Payne, a really good player. Now, when it came to Evan Ingram, tight end, you're not going to do that. Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, running backs, you're not going to do that. Even Daron Payne, really good player for the Commanders. No team's going to go out there and do that. So I don't expect a team to offer an offer sheet to L'Jarius Sneed and then part ways to 2 first-round picks. The Chiefs are going to play this to where let's figure out who's interested. We'll find a way to have a trade that makes sense for both parties because they want to be able to get some compensation from the player, and they also want to get the player to a place where he's actually going to get paid the money that he wants to get paid, since Kansas City is not going to do that. That's the way the Carolina Panthers should be approaching this. And I know as a Panther fan, a lot of y'all are going to want Brian Burns to go somewhere else and the Panthers to get 2 first-round picks. Unfortunately, I just don't think that's going to be the case. They have missed the boat there. Albert Breer reporting on Monday that Carolina's Brian Burns will be an interesting test case if he's traded off the tag when he still had a year and a half left on his deal at the deadline in 2022. The Rams offered a 2023 third, plus a 2024 and 2025 first for him. I'm not sure the Panthers will get close to that now, but we'll see. So he's not sure. Didn't say that they wouldn't, but he's unsure whether the Carolina Panthers will get to that number. I don't necessarily know that will happen. A first-round pick would be great if they're going to do that. I think Brian Burns is exactly the kind of player that you pay. He has come in. He has been a great teammate. He has been a leader, no off-the-field issues, and he's performed on the field as a 2-time Pro Bowler. Sure, this last season, statistically, wasn't great, but when you look at what's out around Brian Burns as far as the other guys at the edge rusher spot the last couple seasons, it's just him. The Panthers don't have any other options outside of Burns. Now, if they were able to trade him and get a first-round pick, then they're right there in the market to get another edge rusher. Or what they probably would do is just draft a wide receiver in this deep receiver class. I don't know what will end up happening if that actually happens to be the case. But it feels like Brian Burns going elsewhere for 2 first-round picks plus a day 2 pick is not going to be the compensation for the Carolina Panthers. Now, Albert Breer is unsure. I'm obviously unsure about that as well. I just would be a little surprised if that is the case for the Carolina Panthers. The way they should approach this, if they're going to go non-exclusive franchise tag, is do the same thing the Kansas City Chiefs are doing, and that's a team that has traded away Tyreek Hill, got a good return for him, and it looks like they're going to do the exact same thing with L'Jarius Sneed. The Panthers should kind of follow that lead, and the good thing is they have someone from that organization who's now here in Brant Tillis. Let Brant Tillis, who's handling salary cap and contracts, help out Dan Morgan, find a way to find an amicable parting of ways with Brian Burns via trade, get the right compensation back, clear up some cap space, and then move forward if that's the route that they want to go down. I still want to see Brian Burns get paid. Absolutely. I want him to be a Carolina Panther. I think he's the exact kind of player, like I mentioned, that you should want to keep around. But the non-exclusive tag is absolutely an option and probably will be the option the Carolina Panthers utilize once they do officially announce that Brian Burns is being franchise tagged by 4 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday afternoon. So we'll get there at some point in time, just not sure when. It will be by 4, but we'll find out soon enough whether it will be exclusive or non-exclusive and how everything works out after that. So again, one final apology. Sorry about that. Totally messed that up. Still does not change my feelings on keeping Brian Burns and does not change my feelings on another team's willingness to give up that much for Brian Burns when they could wait another year where the Panthers will not be able to franchise tag him again because the price will be too high, and then Burns will be a free agent. And who knows, maybe the Panthers get down to the deadline this time and decide, okay, fine, let's just go ahead and get rid of him and get what we can. So we'll see how that all plays out. Mike Evans was considered one of the top free agent wide receivers on the market and an option here in Carolina. He will not be, as he's staying in Tampa Bay. Where the Carolina Panthers go from here, we'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. What's the first thing you do if you had an extra hour in the day? A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. It's a matter of when, not if, Brian Burns will be franchise tagged. Not when, will be by 4 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon. So we play the waiting game. Will it be the non-exclusive franchise tag or the more expensive exclusive franchise tag? it appears that all signs are pointing to the non-exclusive franchise tag. Then we'll find out whether Burns will be extended here in Carolina or if a tag and trade is an option for the team. Do not see the scenario where a team offers an offer sheet to Brian Burns. He agrees to that. Then the Panthers decline to match and then get 2 first-round picks. Do not think a team is willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns in that scenario. But we will see. The Panthers are also, as we know, in the market for a wide receiver. Once free agency opens up, the negotiating period begins on Monday at noon, where the new league year will begin next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. The Carolina Panthers will be hot and heavy looking for a wide receiver, and one receiver that they would have been linked to is no longer on the board, as Mike Evans agreed to a 2-year, $52 million deal with $35 million guaranteed to stay in Tampa Bay. He started off his career as a Buck and now appears to be headed to ending his career in Tampa as well. The Bucs general manager Jason Light said at the combine and multiple times before then that Mike Evans was a priority for the team and that they would like to retain him, and they have done that indeed. Antoine Winfield Jr. is a tag candidate there in Tampa Bay. Then we'll see what happens with our old friend Baker Mayfield, who is saying he's not going to take a hometown discount to stay in Tampa Bay. Atlanta could be interested in Baker. The Patriots could be interested in Baker. Some things to figure out down there in Tampa, as the NFC South will remain wide open. But one of the pieces to try to keep Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, Mike Evans, is staying in Tampa and will not be coming to Carolina. That's a tough blow for the Carolina Panthers. It's one of those things where you look at it from the outside, if you're not even someone who follows Carolina Panthers, and you'd ask yourself, why on earth would Mike Evans want to go from a team that played in the divisional round to a team that went 2-15 last season? Why? Because Dave Canales is the head coach here in Carolina. Dave Canales was a play caller at OC last season in Tampa Bay. Mike Evans was a second team All-Pro because of Dave Canales coming to Tampa Bay and what he was able to do with him. And Mike Evans has talked about before how much he appreciated Dave Canales last year and his approach, and also tweeted out, then deleted, the Dave Canales hire in Carolina was a good hire by the Carolina Panthers with those relationships. And this is a relationship business as much as it is, just a game. You care about the people. I've seen plenty of times where Matt Rule brought in the Temple and Baylor guys. You saw when Ron Rivera left here, a lot of the old Panthers followed him to Washington. Before that, when McDermott went to Buffalo, a lot of former Panthers went up there. You want to stick with your guys. And Mike Evans, I don't know if he's necessarily a Todd Bowles guy or if he's a Canales guy, but he liked Dave Canales, and you could have seen a scenario where he could have came to Carolina, especially if the Panthers are willing to pay what is now $26 million per year in Tampa for Mike Evans to stay there for the next 2 seasons. So it has not worked out. Unfortunate. Would have been a great signing for the Panthers. I know he's going to be 31 this upcoming season. He has not shown any signs of slowing down, just played every game last season again, a Pro Bowler once again, another 1,000-yard receiving season, second time he has been an All-Pro in his NFL career. He is somebody on his way to likely getting a bust in Canton. And part of me is just, I don't know, being a little bit old school. It's nice to see him stay in one place the whole time, but we have seen Tom Brady finish his career in Tampa. We have seen Joe Montana not finish his career in San Francisco. We've seen it for many great players even better than Mike Evans, who have ended up elsewhere. It's a business at the end of the day, but it's also a people business, and he's going to stay there with his people in Tampa. So tough for the Carolina Panthers not to get Mike Evans. Looking at it, some of the top guys now available to the Carolina Panthers, T. Higgins is still on that list, according to Adam Schefter. He has been franchise tagged. The Bengals have not come out and said whether it's the exclusive or the non-exclusive franchise tag. The thought around the league is because that they tagged him before the combine, that the Bengals are going to use the combine week to talk to teams who may be interested in doing a whole tag and trade situation. And that kind of goes back to L'Jarius Sneed. The Chiefs are going to trade him, but they're not expecting to get 2 first-round picks. They're going to figure out what team wants them. They're going to find fair trade compensation and then move on. Same case for the Bengals. If they indeed are going to move on from T. Higgins via trade, they're not getting 2 first-round picks for T. Higgins. That would be insane for a team to give up that much for T. Higgins. Even the Carolina Panthers, especially a team that don't have a first-round pick this year and don't even have their second-round pick next year, you can't be without your first and second a year from now. And I guess they would probably not even have a first round pick in 26. I guess that's the way it probably would go. Not quite sure how exactly they decide which first round pick is the one that's traded away. Panthers just cannot do that at all. Can't go 3 years in a row without a first-round pick, knowing where they stand right now at the bottom of the NFL. But T. Higgins, possibly, if they want to give up a second and a fourth, could be available to them. We'll see how that works out if indeed the Bengals are willing to part ways there. Michael Pittman Jr., the expectation in Indianapolis is he's going to be franchise tag. Chris Ballard, their GM, came out during the combine week and said that he will be a Colt. He was asked in September, will Michael Pittman be a Colt? He said yes. So that's going to be another option that looks like not available. Odell Beckham Jr., I'm kind of good there. Michael Thomas, he would be an option you would think for Sean Payton out in Denver. And I know Panther fans don't even like Michael Thomas, so I'm not even going to pretend like that's somebody that's going to come here. Calvin Ridley, though, he seems like of the top tier guys that are available, he is the most likely candidate for the Carolina Panthers to go out there and do sign. The reporting I gave y'all yesterday from Jeremy Fowler and from Dan Graziano at ESPN.com, it's expected to be a hefty price tag to get Calvin Ridley. We just saw what Mike Evans signed for, $26 million per year. It's going to be there in that low 20s, maybe mid 20s to be able to get Calvin Ridley here on a per year basis for the Carolina Panthers to sign him away from Jacksonville, where the Jags, if they keep him, they would have to give up a second round pick to Atlanta. And if they don't keep him, they only give up a third round pick to the Atlanta Falcons. The Panthers, I guess they're helping by signing Calvin Ridley. They're making sure the Falcons don't get a second round pick. That could be some incentive out there. Brandon Ayuk is another player that we've talked about. According to Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, contract discussions with Ayuk are not going to happen until free agency, and it appears that is going to head in the direction of him staying in San Francisco. All these top-tier receivers seem to be coming off the board. Evans is absolutely off the board. Higgins, I feel like Cincinnati wants to keep him. He's going to be off the board. It looks like Pittman off the board. Who's going to be Odell Beckham Jr. shouldn't even be on the board for the Panthers. Kind of same feeling about Michael Thomas as well, especially with his injury history. Calvin Ridley, kind of the last guy there for the Panthers to go after when it comes to the top tier receivers. They're going to have to figure out who's on the second tier of their board. And this is likely going to be the case anyways. The Panthers having $35 million in cap space right now, $24 million will be allocated to Brian Burns. That leaves them with $11 million. Now they did make another move. They were about to make another move that'll open up about $6 million of cap space. So about $17 million. That's not a ton of, and that's before other moves like potentially extending Tara Bowden. That opens up 13, extending Brian Burns. That opens up $8 million, cutting Ian Thomas, cutting Terrace Marshall. That's another $3 million. There is ways to get about $33 more million of cap space when they make a couple more of these moves. Well, not 33, because that's 13, 881. That's okay. It's 13 plus 8. So that's about $24 million. Still, there's ways to open up a little bit more cap space here coming up for the Carolina Panthers throughout the rest of this week before they do officially get to the negotiating period on Monday and then the new league year, 4 p.m. next Wednesday. But they're going to probably look at now some second-tier guys like a Hollywood Brown who brings some speed for the Carolina Panthers, potentially. Gabe Davis from Buffalo, who's been a solid player for the Bills for some years to come as well. Darnell Mooney, also another player, would bring some speed. I think he's a pretty good player with the Bears the last couple of seasons. Curtis Samuel, an old friend. There are going to be some second-tier options that aren't going to break the bank for the Carolina Panthers, and this is an organization that is traditionally, and this is really the way to go, they're an organization that has not really been big-time spenders in free agency. So I would expect them to also be bargain hunting, and maybe not super bargain hunting. I don't think they're going to be paying top dollar for any of these free agents coming up next week. Don't look at them now to get a top-tier guy, unless it's Calvin Ridley, looking like they're going to have to start taking some of these second-tier guys like a Hollywood Brown or a Gabe Davis, now that Mike Evans, who would have made a lot of sense for the Carolina Panthers, is off the board and staying in Tampa Bay. Speaking of ways to clear up some cap space, one player we had talked about could be a salary cap casualty, appears to be a salary cap casualty, as Carolina Panthers reportedly are going to be moving on from Dante Jackson. What does that do for the Carolina Panthers cornerback outlook moving forward? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. The wait is almost over. North Carolina FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to our state. Next Monday on March 11th, we'll finally be able to bet on all our favorite teams and all our favorite sports. With FanDuel, there's tons of ways for you to get in on the action. You can bet on everything from the money line to over-unders, which team will win this year's Tobacco Road rivalry, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, with live betting, you can even pick which player will put up the next bucket and the one after that. See for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon so you can be the first to know when FanDuel goes live in North Carolina. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Last week, when the rest of the NFL was making moves to clear up some cap space in Indianapolis at the Combine, the Carolina Panthers were fairly quiet as they did not make any significant moves. And we wondered, was that a byproduct of the Panthers waiting to see what's going to happen with Brian Burns, negotiating with him, trying to figure out would they sign him to a new deal, or would it be the franchise tag and $24 million of their cap space going away? Then they would start to make some moves. Now that we've heard a bunch of reports from Adam Schefter, Josina Anderson, from Dan Graziano, and many others out there that Brian Burns is going to be franchise tagged, the Carolina Panthers can start to make some of those moves to clear up some cap space by way of Brian Burns now taking up a ton of cap space coming up as the new league year approaches and legal negotiating period starts on Monday afternoon. And that first move appears to be moving on from Dante Jackson. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN.com saying the Panthers are expected to trade or release veteran corner Dante Jackson per sources. Jackson has a $4 million roster bonus due March 16th, which should spur action. A release would save $5.9 million on the cap. Dante Jackson had the second highest cap number on the team, currently still does, as he's still a Carolina Panther. He has the second highest cap number at $15.7 million, which is still pretty low compared to Taylor Moton's $29 million cap hit. Well, there's a big difference. Taylor Moton was a player the Carolina Panthers should look to extend, a player who the Panthers have relied on at right tackle, who has been out there, has an Iron Man streak, where Dante Jackson is somebody who has battled turf toe, a hamstring injury, a groin injury, a torn Achilles. He has dealt with that since 2020. And this past year only missed one game. Really great to see Dante Jackson stay healthy, especially for now his trade prospects, not just for the Carolina Panthers' sake, but for his sake, that a team will look at the medicals and say, okay, yes, he's dealt with injuries, but last year he was able to buck that trend that was started in 2020 and play a full season. And he can be somebody that we, another team, speaking of we, would be able to depend on as a starting corner next season. There's still teams out there I think will be interested in Dante Jackson. I would guess that he likely fetches a day 3 pick. I don't think their Panthers are going to get, obviously they're not getting a first, they're not getting a second. I don't think they're getting a 3rd round pick. I would think probably like a 5th or a 6th round pick. 4th would be great for Dante Jackson if they're able to facilitate that trade. Now, the roster bonus is due next Saturday, March 16th. The Panthers are going to want to get rid of him by then. If they're not able to, it's just going to be go ahead and release him, and that will save $5.9 million against the salary cap. So right now, they have $35 million, so just plus 5.9, really just plus 6. They'll have $41 million of cap space. Add Brian Burns in there. That's $17 million of cap space. And there's some other moves, like $13 million if they extend Taylor Moton. That's 30. And then if you go out there, the Panthers do it, they extend Derek Brown, that's 38. You cut Terrace Marshall and you cut Ian Thomas, that is about $41 million. So the Panthers can find some cap space now that they are going to find a way right now with Dante Jackson to move off of him, whether it's going to be a trade or a release. And looking at overthecap.com, whether he's traded or released, it's still $5.9 million the Carolina Panthers are able to save. Now, they will have to eat a bit of money when it comes to dead cap. It'll be $9.7 million dead cap the Carolina Panthers will have to eat, but that's worth it. And this is a byproduct, too, of all the restructures. When you restructure a deal, you push money down the road. You get to a point in time where you look at your number 2 corner, a guy who was consistent for you this year being on the field, and you got to tell him, we just can't have you at that cap number. We're going to have to release you, or we're going to have to trade you. We just can't keep you around. Now, for the Panthers, this does complicate things a bit when it comes to the cornerback position. J.C. Horn, who Joe Person, it's either him or Matt Kay. Don't want to get it wrong, but one of those two guys are believing that the Panthers will likely pick up his 5th-year option. I've questioned that because, well, the guy has missed a ton of games. I know he's a good player when he plays, hasn't played a lot. Wouldn't you want to wait to see if he can prove to you? But looking at what the franchise tag number next year would be for a corner compared to what it would cost Panthers to just give him the 5th-year option for next season, the Panthers can save a lot of money if J.C. Horn is able to stay healthy, play well, and they go ahead and do the whole 5th-year option, which, if he wasn't injured ever, it would be so simple to say yes to that. And for the Panthers, it may still be simple to say yes to that. But after that, it's DiCaprio Boodle, Deshaun Jameson, AJ Parker, Lamar Jackson. Those are Lamar Jackson, not the one in Baltimore, of course. Those are the other corners on the roster for the Carolina Panthers. I don't look at any of those guys as someone who's going to step up and replace Dante Jackson. So as great as it is, the Panthers are going to free up about $6 million of cap space. They need to have a plan for replacing Dante. CJ Henderson, don't think he's a part of those plans as he's out the door. Shaq Griffin, we'll see what happens there. Troy Hill, I would expect he'll come back to play another role for the Carolina Panthers as a veteran in that slot. And this is a draft. I was reading Ben Solak from The Ringer. He was talking about this is a great draft. You need a slot corner. Troy Hill can be that. The Panthers could go out there and get a slot corner. Mike Sanderstrill out of Michigan is that top guy right now. Don't know if that's what the Panthers want to do at 33. Not sure whether he'll be there at 33, probably, considering he's a slot guy, not an outside corner. And there's some other options out there. Andrew Phillips from Kentucky, somebody that has been mocked to the Carolina Panthers by Dane Brugler of The Athletic. That could be another option for the Carolina Panthers, but they're going to have to find an outside corner. They're going to need to find somebody who can be opposite of JC, hopefully for the next 3-4 years, barring that JC gets the 5th-year option, then he signs an extension here in Carolina. We'll see how all that works out. It would be nice if that's the way things work out, but they're going to need to find somebody who can start opposite of him for the next 3-4 plus years, if that can be the case. And I would think that now with Dante Jackson exiting Carolina, the Panthers are going to have to bring back a veteran presence. They may even try to add a veteran at corner, but they really should probably try to find someone via the draft to come in and help out and be that long-term starter for the team. So Dante Jackson, really do appreciate his play here in Carolina. Unfortunate, the injuries that he suffered. Thought this past year he was just okay. And for a player who's just okay, you can't sit there and eat $15.7 million of the salary cap, even if you're going to have to eat a decent chunk of that with the dead cap hit going towards the salary cap. So there it is. Dante Jackson, the Carolina Panthers expect to move on from him. We'll find out when that happens, whether it be a trade or a release. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays here on the show throughout the offseason, I'll be answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions into me now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday, where we'll likely react to the Carolina Panthers placing the franchise tag on Brian Burns.